Hey friends, Dawn here, welcoming you to the Soul Goals podcast and year number 3. This year, we are diving into expanding our perspectives, challenging our belief systems, and working the mental and emotional muscles of our souls. Though still all about growth and connection, this year finds opportunities to hear from people in our communities that have walked a path that might be different from our own, but that ultimately present us with the chance to look at a subject in a different light and learn other ways we could approach challenges in our own world. Let's get to it. Welcome to another episode of the Soul Goals podcast. My name is Dawn. So glad you're joining in today. Year number 3, where we are tackling a new subject every week. And my guest is coming on to speak about their experience with that subject in an effort for us to know a little bit more about what that involves, maybe learn a little bit more and step outside of our comfort zone for the subject that we're hearing about. Specifically today, I wanted to have Roy come on, and the subject we're speaking about today is caregiving, specifically to an older population, to parents, to aging parents, and caregiving in general, all the things that it kind of puts upon us as the caregiver. I wanted Roy to talk about his personal experience because Roy is a fellow podcaster for the Gray Take podcast, Grey. So check that out, the Gray Take podcast. He and a couple of his co-hosts are awesome in that role. And what they do is share specific details about the challenges that caregiving has and the aging parents and the population that we are in. And before we hit the record, Roy and I were speaking about kind of our age and where we are in that whole spectrum. And we're really right in the middle of that whole time of taking care of aging parents, or we have just completed that cycle. And for Roy, he's going to speak a little bit about his experience with his parents. And I think this is an interesting point too. I want to jump into when we get to that point is about being a male caregiver, because that's something that we don't hear a lot about. But let's back up a minute and just talk about Roy being an amazing podcast guest, obviously, but also an amazing podcast host. And here's he is a fellow creative and he is a former film and TV audio mixer. So he's got a lot of different hats in the ring right there. Roy, tell me a little bit about what you're doing right now. Give me a little bit of a snapshot about kind of like podcasting, any editing, any kind of creative stuff that you're in the middle of right now.
All right. I am in the middle of recording we're almost done with our first season of the Gray Take. And I think we're
exciting.
Episodes 19 and 20, I believe, on the 17th of February. And then we have 2 more, and then we go right into season 2, which is great. So the nice thing about this podcast is that it is sponsored by Brookdale, which is a nationwide nursing home. So it's very legitimate. I had to audition for it. It wasn't just like, me and Mary or MB Roberts and Susie Lind. So I had to audition with them and everything. And we all just meshed really, really well. And then they also wanted a male perspective on all this. So that has been a great experience. But I have to tell you, since you've been doing podcasting, I've never done it before. It's way harder than I thought. It's so hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
Like interviewing people is not that, it's not that, but it's a format. You're watching a screen, you're doing all these things. And I just, I didn't realize it was going to be so it's not intense. It's not that, but it's just more of like moving on from subject matter to subject matter. I think I'm very much like an organic flow. And then I'm like, wait, how do I go from this part to this part? And Mary Beth or MB is coming in or Susie's coming in, this, that. And I'm like, I'm just learning because they do other podcasts. So I'm just learning a lot as I'm doing it because I'm just like, this is crazy. But I'm getting a better flow with it. So
yeah.
But
I think you're doing a great job from what I've heard. I'm impressed. So yeah, keep out. And you know what? Somebody told me the other day, you just got to rip the Band-Aid off and just go for it. Right?
Well, the best thing about it is that we're here to help and educate people about what to do and what not to do. Because I think like almost every episode, I'm like, don't do what I did. Don't.
You're saying that?
Yeah, I say that kind of like all the time. It's like, don't do what I did. And so we're here to help, and it's not just us telling our stories. We're interviewing really great people that have a lot of great information, from all kinds of areas. So it's just to help people that are in the middle of it right now,
Right.
because we live that and it's very difficult, and we're trying to make it easier for people in the moment. So, and we'll
Right.
we'll dive more into that. And then on top of that as well, I'm working on this documentary. I was telling you a little bit about that and everything.
Yeah.
So it's about my friend um, who is healing from breast cancer. And so she's doing it a little differently than most people do. So it's interesting how we're doing this. So I don't want to dive too deep into that, but I'm trying to edit and create this all right now. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I'm
Well,
doing.
you've got a lot going on. So let's just jump right into what happened with you along the caregiving path, because I think it's really getting someone's personal perspective and their input from where they stand is so beneficial. I really feel like that's where we learn about so many different things and about ourselves ultimately, too. We find out a lot about what we believe, what we knew, what we didn't know. So let's talk a little bit, Roy, about how this all came about for you, because you ended up being the primary caregiver for both your father and your mom. And interestingly, I want to say that being a male caregiver is something that I had never thought about. Like we talked about that maybe a couple months ago, and that whole aspect. Because when I think caregiver, I think, my sister-in-law cared for my mother-in-law. My sister-in-law cared for my father-in-law when I wasn't able, or my father when I wasn't able to be there. So there's a lot of a lot of interesting perspective around that. So give me your take on how this all came about, why it is that you came into that role of having to do the caretaking for your parents, and what that challenge was for you as a male in that whole aspect.
Yeah, sure. I can dive right into that. So in 2006, my mom had a major stroke, and my sister got married, and I don't remember what year it was, but she was living in Chattanooga. She still lives in Chattanooga. So she was there raising children and deep in
Mm,
marriage and all that stuff. So I was here. I just moved back from Los Angeles, and I was here not even a year. And my mom had this major stroke because, my mom and dad were actually going to sell the house and move to Chattanooga and be with my sister and the kids. And all that pressure and all that craziness kind of drove my mom's blood pressure nuts, and she had a stroke. Now, my mom always
mm,
had, sorry, like a little hair thing. My mom has always had like bad health, and
mhm.
so when that happened, I grew up with her having like health issues. I mean, she's had a laundry list of stuff going on, and so
Right.
like breast cancer, mastectomy, quadruple bypass with a heart valve installed. Like, there's always something going. There was always something going on with her, but she always had the greatest attitude about everything, which was like really wild to see that. So anyway, but she had this stroke, and it just turned the world upside down for me and my dad because we didn't understand what was going on. And before I knew, I mean, my mom shouldn't have, she never should have survived that. She never should have survived that at all. The doctors are like, she's a miracle that she's alive right now. So diving into that world, it just became like something new every single day, and it just turned into complete survival mode. So
Mm,
I ended up just becoming the caregiver for my parents because, I moved from LA working in the TV world, but I was a freelancer. So I had all this time in the world. You know how freelancing works. You're not
yes.
9 to 5 doesn't exist. So,
Right.
but when jobs are calling for you, you got to go. So I had that world pulling me in this direction. And then the caregiving, or the beginning of all that, was just keeping me completely, tied down to being home. So,
Mhm.
so that's how that started happening. Was I just became a caregiver out of nowhere. Like, I didn't know
Yeah.
anything, nothing. Like, I just was like, I don't know what I'm doing at all. And my mom had to learn how to walk and talk and do all this other stuff, lots of OT and PT and all this other stuff. And so I just was watching that happen and taking care of my mom. And then what happened was that my dad ended up having a mini stroke in 2009. So 3 years went into that. So for between 2006 and 2009, I was working still in TV and being able to go and then come back and then go and come back. And I was doing shows like Super Nanny and I don't know. I don't want to get on the list of everything, but I was able to go and work for a while, then come back, and I wasn't gone that long, but I was able to like still take care of my parents, and they were still a bit independent. But then my dad had a mini stroke in 2009 of February, and it just started to really bring him down. And then I really had to dig in. And then in November 2009, my dad had a massive stroke. And that was actually, I was working on Jamie Oliver's Food Revolution in West Virginia. I was working on that TV show. And my sister was like, you need to come home now. And so I just drove 5 hours straight home. And my dad passed away a few days later.
Oh,
So,
wow.
but during that time before he passed away, I was just taking care of them, and that was really hard to take care of both of them. Now, my mom was
Oh,
able to,
yeah.
yeah, my mom was able to get back speech and walking and all that other stuff. So she was like functioning fine, but still she had a lot of problems with her vision and all kinds of other stuff. So there was still a lot going on. But then and then my dad died. And so then I started going through that hellacious world, but what I ended up doing then was I kind of took, when that happened in '09, I took my life and I just put it on the shelf and put it way over there.
Mm.
And I was like, my focus is to keep my mom alive, because I told my dad, he couldn't talk back to me when I got to the hospital. And it was like this really amazing moment that I'll never forget. He was laying in the hospital, he's in the bed and everything. He's laying there, and I think it was ICU. I think it was. Yeah, it was ICU. And I was in there and I was just rambling about all kinds of things, telling him stuff. But I remember I was just like, I'm going to take care of mom. Don't worry, I'm going to take care of mom. And so my dad's laying there and he can hear me, but he can't speak. But he just, as I bring my arm into view, like he brings his hand up and we just hold hands like that.
Oh, wow, Roy, that's so
And it was like,
special.
that was like him. That was me. That was us saying like, we love each other. And that was my way of saying goodbye. So I'm really
Yeah,
grateful that I had that moment, because there's so many people that don't have those moments,
sure, sure.
Powerful impacted, but that was my way of saying, Dad, I was like, Dad, I'm going to take care of mom. Don't worry.
Yeah.
And, and then he passed away a few days later. And then I just literally did. I just put my life on hold and then focused in on my mom. And then like a year later, she had breast cancer again, and she had to have a mastectomy. And
Well,
my mom was on blood thinners, and so like Coumadin and everything, and so it's just like it like everything got just more intense every year. It was never a time of like plateauing or going up. It was just every year was just a tick down. So it was so
that
intense.
sounds so intense. That's a great word for it from what I hear you saying.
Yeah, it was brutal. And so, but you're right about the male caregiving thing, is that with nurses and everything else like that, being in the hospitals all the time, or OT and PT coming to the house and everything, they would always say, we don't really see a lot of men doing this. This is mainly women doing this. And I always thought my sister was going to take care of my mom and dad, but she moved to Chattanooga. Damn it.
Yeah.
So it left me.
And then she had her family to take care of as well. Yeah, it's a big deal. Yeah.
I mean, no knock on my sister, but she's
Yeah.
really great at taking care of kids, because she's also a teacher of special
Yeah.
needs kids, like I think second or third grade or something like that, but really young kids. And I can't remember the age group there, but anyway. But honestly, she admits, she's like, I'm not that great at taking care of adults.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's not like I am either, but I was just, it fell on me, and I became that person, but it was ripping me apart at the same time. And so
Mhm.
it was extremely difficult. And you don't often hear of male caregivers, the sons taking care of the parents. It's usually the daughters, and all that. But I was by myself here in Nashville, completely alone. And there was no one around to help me as far as like family. There was no other family. There was nothing. So it was just me doing everything. And so my life just became that. And that went on for 11 years.
Wow, Roy.
11 years. Yeah. My entire 30s into my early 40s. That's how long it went on, for 11 years.
So you had to put so many things on the back burner for you personally.
Life.
Your work, your life, your social, your work, your personal caregiving for yourself. But what I really want to kind of just touch on a little bit is the fact that you were already taking care of your mom, and then the emotional intensity of your father having his incident and then passing away in the midst of all that. Like you talked about that intensity just building, 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 building continuously. And
Yeah,
what that does to us as people, that we're under that amount of pressure nonstop. It creates so many different things. And as I know, you have different things that have kind of came out of that time for you that you've now had to deal with physically, not only mentally and emotionally when everything is
yeah.
processing and how you're going through it, but tell me a little bit about what toll that took on you through those 11 years and when it started in that whole kind of a pressure cooker situation for you.
The toll it took on me was it was very it was very emotionally damaging and physically damaging. And so
Mhm.
what that means is that I wasn't doing drugs or alcohol or doing a bunch of stupid shit. I wasn't. It had nothing to do with that, but it was breaking me down because it was like the outside looking in of witnessing my life, not going anywhere and doing anything while everybody else was getting married and having careers and kids and all that. And I was isolated in one spot. So the stress of just being stuck in one place and the mental stability from it all, or instability from it all, or however you want to say it, and is it or instability, whatever. So anyway, but my body started to break down, and I ended up getting really sick, and so um, I ended up getting colitis from it all, which
Mhm.
I'd never heard anything about. I didn't know anything about any of this stuff, but it was just breaking me down because I couldn't handle what was going on anymore, because things kept getting harder and harder and harder with my mom, and
Mhm.
so you know, again, it's like when I think about like, doing all this podcast on the Gray Take, the more that I interview people, the more that I'm involved with everything. I just sit and I'm learning from Susie and MB and these other people that are, that have done it, and therapists and all this other stuff. It's just like, why didn't I use my resources? Why did I not use caregivers? I mean, we tried doing that with caregivers, trying to hire people in, but that's really tricky.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
but there's a lot of resources, there's a lot of groups, there's a lot of things that you can do. And I honestly think that what I was doing was, one, being really stubborn, and two, I was
Oh,
depressed. I was depressed, and I was just, I didn't know what to do. And so, and getting sick made everything a million times worse. Like,
always, right?
it's like, people can say like, oh, you may not have any money, you may not have your career, house, whatever, but at least you have your health. Well, I didn't have any
Mm,
of that. I had none of that
yeah,
stuff, and
yeah,
so, and when you don't have your health, it just brings you down. And so man, it's been, it took a toll. It took a
yeah.
really big toll on me for a long time, and so, but to do that through my entire 30s and then into my early 40s before she passed away in 2017, then I had this entire time to heal, a long time to heal after that, because I had to go through the mourning of my father, my mom, and then all this emotional stuff. So it's been a really bizarre journey. It's been so
Yeah.
crazy. But I think that's kind of like this beauty about it now, is that I can sit here and talk about it and try to help people, and they can come to me with anything, and I tell them like, don't try to do this, try to do that, try to do that, don't do it this way. So I like
Mhm.
knowing that I can help people now, and try
Mhm.
to guide them on the right things to do and what not to do. And that's what we do in the Great Take, and that's what I just do with anybody that calls and asks anything. Because people are
Yeah.
like, hey, can someone get in touch with you about this? I'm like, feel free to, yeah, anytime, you know.
Absolutely. That's how we work through the world, I feel. That's been my personal experience. Is when I have something going on, I'm going to search out the people that can maybe empathize with it, sit with me with it, maybe give me a different perspective based on their experience of walking through it. And that, like I said, like that's the idea here of the soul goals of the platform, is to find that relatability and that connection that we all share and that we can really benefit one another with. It's not just about benefiting us, it's about benefiting the greater whole, right? Let's talk a little bit about the afterwards, and let's talk about that healing process for you. Like you said, in 2017 is when your mom passed away. What were some of the feelings that went along with that? Obviously, you're mourning the loss of your mother, a very dear person in your life that you
Oh,
have spent so many years taking care of and intimately spending time with.
yeah.
But was there anything of a sense of maybe relief that, oh my gosh, she's now in a better place. I now have an opportunity to heal? Or was there resentment, or was there grief, or was there just that emptiness that we sometimes feel when we lose somebody so close to us and so intimately tied to us?
It was all of it. Sprinkle all that on there. I
Mm,
remember the day that my mom, obviously, of course, I'll never forget that. The day my mom passed away in the ICU. And I just remember, this weight being lifted off. And I was like, okay, but then a new weight started to sit back in. So it was like, I don't have that responsibility anymore, but now I have a responsibility on myself because remember, I shelved that for a really long time. And now I have to become, now I have to go through all this. And it was
mm,
healing my body, my mind, and my soul from all that I went through because it was like all this time has gone by. Now what do I do? And so I remember being at home and after when someone passes away or whatever, then you got to go through all the whole process. Everybody comes around, people come
mhm.
around everywhere, and they're like, so sorry, blah blah blah, and all that stuff. It's like great. And then I'll also never forget like the day that my sister left, and she left the house, and then I was just sitting in the house, and it was complete silence. And I think I just sat there and cried for I don't know how long because I was like, it's dead silence, and then you feel extremely isolated and alone caregiving. But then when they're gone, that isolation and that loneliness ramps up even more. It's weird
Yeah.
because you don't have anything left. And you're just sitting there just going, now what? I mean, that was your identity. That was my identity,
Yes.
was that. And I'm like, well, who am I now? And so the journey really began and it was so much, there was a lot of grief. The resentment was there. There was a
Mhm.
lot of resentment, of course. That's part of it. Everybody has to go through that. There are a lot of anger and resentment, but therapy really helped me. I remember, I remember about a few months in, I was on the phone with my sister and I said, "When is it okay to laugh again?" You know,
Hmm.
She's like, "It's just going to take time because I didn't know how to laugh." And
Wow. Really?
and so, but I started off on this crazy journey, and these people that were coming into my life that really helped me, and it wasn't. Here's the weird thing. It wasn't a lot of the people that I grew up with here in town, my friends and all that, because I was so isolated from them for so long, and they were living their lives raising kids that it was like they don't have time for me, and I was like, I get that. And so I mean, there
Yeah.
were some, but like this whole new world of people shifted into me, and honestly, it was like it was like this tribe of women, they're
That's
all
fun.
empathetic and sympathetic women that were like coming in because it's like I have this. The year that my mom passed away in 2017, I was introduced to macrobotics, which
Yeah.
would just came
Yeah.
out of nowhere. And this woman, Virginia Harper, who's my macrobotic counselor, she really took me in almost like a son. And
Mm.
so she really took care of me because she was like, you have so much emotional stuff you have to go through to heal your body. And that's been going on ever since. And
Yes.
so she took me in. Peggy White, she took me in. I met her through the macrobiotic world, and then her daughter has a son named Elgin, and he was 2 when I met him, and that's when I started to bond with her son because what happened was going through all this grief and anger and resentment, going through therapy, doing talking head therapy, doing EMDR, all these things. The best therapy that I ever got until still to this day was hanging out with a 2-year-old and playing and
Oh, I
laughing.
love that.
And it was just bringing that kid inside of me that was just like buried, because I was going
Yeah.
through. shit. So it was just like, but the innocence of a child and like being in the present moment and all that, because when you're caregiving, you're living in the past and you're thinking about the future and you're terrified of the future, but you're also living in the past because it's comfort. And
Mhm.
because the present tense caregiving just sucks and you don't want to be there. And so, but being in front of like a kid and he just wants to play with cars, he wants to do all this other stuff. I was learning how to like have fun again. And so we would
Yeah.
just laugh and crack up and play silly games and and it was like a I mean so his dad, they were never married, but his dad lived like down the road or whatever, so it's lucky that his dad wasn't around, but I just bonded with him and we've been
Yeah.
best buddies ever since, and he's 8 now and we're still best buds. So that's been that's been the best therapy that I've had out of everything that I've done, was just being around a kiddo and just being silly and goofy, because it really started to heal my soul, you know.
Yeah. Well, what I hear you saying is your tribe as a whole, the community that surrounded you
Yeah,
became this whole idea of when the caregiver needs care. The caregiver still needs care. I think that's a big thing that a lot of people, and I will be super honest with you.
yeah,
Yeah, massive. I'll be super honest with you. When I look at people that are doing the caregiving role, I'm enamored with the fact that they have that ability and that capacity, because it takes a special kind to really do that work with, and to be present with someone in those ways.
yeah,
But I just don't think about, you know, I just don't think that they're not taking care of themselves. But what you're saying makes so much sense because of the isolation and the
mm,
demands on you as a caregiver. It's very hard to attend to that piece. So it makes complete sense to me that the caregiver needs care himself as well.
yeah. It is, and it's not just eat healthy and sleep good. I mean,
Right.
your sleep patterns turn to shit because you just don't know what's going to happen in the middle of the night. I guess it's similar to like raising a child, which I don't know, but I'm sure that it is. But well, not I don't know. I can't really. That's two different comparisons, but it's still, the point being is that your sleep patterns get all jacked up, and
Yeah.
so I think it's just more along the lines of when I'm when I'm when I'm in the middle of all that caregiving and people are always constantly calling and constantly needing information and all this stuff, and no one is asking, how are you doing?
Mhm.
Are you taking care of yourself? What are you doing for yourself? And that is so important because people are only concerned about the patient. And so it's like, look, they're getting tons of care. Everyone's concerned about them, but what about the caregiver? And that's always overlooked. And caregivers need a lot of care because it's not, I mean, it could be anything. It's almost like, okay, what can you do? Where can you go to like make yourself, give some time for yourself? If it's a lot of women, it's like go get a mani pedi, go to a spa,
Yeah,
go get
yeah.
a massage, go do that, And so it's just like, what can you do? But it just gets difficult, and there's tons of caregivers out there that will agree that we get overlooked. We get
Yeah.
completely overlooked because they're more concerned about the patient. So I would stress that to anyone. When I talk to
Mhm.
someone that's my mom is passing away or really, really sick or whatever, I'm like, okay, I'm really, really, I mean, I don't sound like this, but I'm like, okay, I'm really sorry. I'm trying to get to the point is that I'm sorry, blah, 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 show the empathy and care. But I'm like, what can I do for you?
Yeah.
Never ask
Yeah.
like, what does your mom need? I'm like, she's got all the care. She's got tons of care because family's in whatever, doing whatever. I was like, but what can I do for you? What do you
Mhm.
need? Like, what can I bring you? What can I spend time with you when you're done? Like when it's your shift's over, can I come and hang out with you, take you somewhere? That's where my focus goes because I
Right.
didn't get that, and I'm
Yeah.
not blaming anybody for that, but it's just, I think it's normal for everybody to shift over onto who is sick and who is dying, and they don't really think about the caregiver that much.
Yeah,
So
it's what's in our face. It's a reality of what's
yeah,
happening.
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
totally. So like when my mom,
Mhm.
now granted, I don't want to take anything away from my sister because my sister did everything in the world to try to help in so many
Mhm.
ways. I know that she's held on to that for a long time and she doesn't need to. I think she's always felt guilty about that. We've had conversations
Mhm.
and I was like, Amy, it's fine. So but my mom would go down there and see her and hang out with her and the kids and do all that and try to give me breaks. But the problem was that this was also during when things were getting harder and then I was sick. It didn't matter if mom was gone for a long weekend or whatever. I was so messed up from that illness that I was learning to live with now, that I just, like, a break wasn't enough, So it was
Yeah.
like, but it just made that whole world differently. But if you're not dealing with any of that, it's so important to give that time away, to have that time to yourself. And then, then it completely shifts when it's all over, and we can get into that too. So,
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about that, because you're now in the middle of reclaiming your identity. I mean, if I think about this, 2017 was not terribly long ago, in a snapshot, basically, what, eight, 9, 10 years ago. But
yeah,
here's the point. I think that, the reality of where you sat for as long as you sat, the unwinding that has to happen around that, kind of undoing all the things that went into being a caregiver, the things that you had to put over to the side, that you said you put on a shelf for a while, they're now all coming right on back. They're flooding back in. And I'm not just talking about the opportunities and the possibilities, but I'm talking about the emotions and, like you said, the physicality and the things that it depleted within your system. And I want to say, I think we just tend to overlook in an effort to do the best that we can in the situation we are in. So for you and your sister, I know that both of you did the best that you could in the times that you had, because that's what we do. But then at the end of the day, when everything is said and done, how do we then look at, what, I deserve to take care of myself. I deserve to have a full life after this. It's almost like there was a freeze frame that happened with you, if I'm hearing you right, for everybody that you were friends with and them progressing on in their life. But you're sitting in this place that you don't begrudge, because you had that time with your family.
right.
But also, it's a weird dynamic to go, all right, now I have the time. What do I do with it? Where am I now?
Yeah. And I'm learning so much just with this podcast that I'm on from all these other people, that I'm like, man, if I would have done these things differently, maybe I never would have gotten sick. Maybe I would be doing my own thing right now, going back into the world that I used to live in. But since I did it the hard way, but I was still learning. You don't know you're really doing it the hard way until you're done with it. You go, oh,
Mm, mhm,
damn, I really screwed that one up, didn't I?
mm.
So, but yeah, I lost my complete identity. I had no identity, and it took forever, because it's just like, I'm learning to be a sick person now. How do I live with the disease? And then how do I function in life? How do I go back to work? Like, what are my skill sets? I can't go back into film and TV, because that world consists of like 12, 14, 16-hour days. It's like, my body can't handle that. And it requires, like, going all over the place, work until 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning. I can't do any of that stuff anymore. So I'm just like, well, that world's out. So now what do I do? And yeah, and then you go through your bouts of depression. Because you're just like, so much time has passed.
Yeah.
So much time has passed. My adulthood has been this. Like, where do I start? Where do I begin? Like, I don't know. And it's just really hard to kind of figure that out, because at the end of the day, what's kind of crazy is that you just want your mom and dad to be right there with that unconditional love and that support, to say, what they always used to say. And so it's in the back of my head, but still, it's really hard to figure out what I'm going to do next. I still don't know what I'm going to do next. And I'm 51, and I'm not
Yeah.
sitting here just going, oh yeah, I know exactly what I'm doing and all this and other that. Like, nope, I don't know.
Yeah, but I
So,
think you brought up a really good point. Like, you don't know that you're in the shit until you're out of the shit, right? I
mhm,
mean, you know it, but you don't really
yeah,
understand the bigger picture for you until
yeah,
you're out of it. So, I mean, we could say all experience is experience, whether it's good, bad, ugly, whatever. We can attach those labels to it. But I think too, like, I love what you said about you still just want that, the unconditional support, and that knowing that your parents,
yeah,
that they're with you, and that you can, that you're still a part, that's still a part of you, but in this way, and supporting you in a new role that you're now trying to figure out what that role is.
yeah.
And hey, by the way, I'm just gonna let you know, I don't think any of us really know what we're doing. Just so I'm gonna let you off the hook right there.
I don't know.
Seriously, Roy.
No, yeah, but it's true. Like, I was at Peggy's, because I'm still really close with Peggy. and I was at her house the other day, and Elgin was there, and it was great. And he was like, I really want to watch this little movie. And I was like, okay. And I already had some really nice soup that Peggy made, and her house was really warm and comfortable. And I was sitting in the chair, and Elgin wanted to watch this little cartoon movie that actually looked good. I was like, this looks good. But I got really comfortable and I started to fall asleep.
Okay.
And I fell asleep in the chair, and I was just like, and it was so nice because it was like these little moments, these couple of hours that I have in those little moments right there. That's the only time, and not every single time, but that's the only time that I have a sense of feeling like I have like a home with like a family. And
Yeah.
so, like, because Peggy and Virginia they're basically like my two substitute moms. They really embrace me, which I'm grateful for and love them to death. And so, but it makes me feel like I have a home again, and comfort where you're like, man, I'm just gonna go to my parents' house and just hang out for a minute, and you know, not everybody has those options or whatever and everything, but I really grew up with these amazing parents, and I really want to stress that out to let other people know that a huge reason why I took care of my mom and dad was because they were just awesome. I grew up with like this beaver cleaver type mom and dad where they worked the perfect hours. They were always there. They were safe. They provided safety. They provided a home. They provided food. And we grew up in a really small home in Green Hills, really tiny home, and it was great. But it seemed huge when we were kids, but it's really tiny. It's not there anymore. But they were just, my mom she always had these health issues, but she was always like super happy, super positive, and she was just like, you got to just keep moving forward, and had all this great, she loved life, man. He loved living life. And my dad was a former Metro police officer, former
Mhm.
Marine, former police officer. So, he was like a bulldog, but like a big teddy bear. And all my sister's friends, all my friends, everybody loved my parents. And to this day, her friends and my friends have said, I wanted, or want, and I think that I wanted to emulate what your parents had. So my mom and dad kind of set the bar really high as far as like
Yeah.
older. I want love that they had, marriage like they had, all this other stuff, because they loved each other so much that I didn't grow up with like fights and arguments and like dad gone for like a week, mom gone for a week, or just all this crazy. I didn't grow up with any of that stuff. And
Mhm.
so I grew up with like these really amazing parents. And when all this was going down, the idea of like putting like of a nursing facility or whatever like that. Now there was times that we tried it, just to see if we can make it work, but it was so expensive we couldn't do it. There was no way
Right.
we could do it. So it was just destined for me to take care of him, and it just happened. It just took a really long time. So, but yeah, my parents were amazing, and I want people to know that like I tell it's just like when my girlfriends from a long time ago, and whenever I was dating them, I was like, I don't want you to meet my parents yet. They're like, why? And I was like, because when you meet them, our relationship level is here, and it's gonna go because you're gonna fall in love with my mom and dad, and you're gonna be like, oh, and it happened every single time. These girls would come in and be like, hi, and they'd be leaving, just be like, I love your parents, and I was like, I know. And so, because my dad would joke around and have fun, and then my mom would just focus on you, put a blanket on you, give you food and stuff. And I've watched my girlfriends like fall asleep on the couch just from talking to my mom because she's asking all these questions. They get so comfortable. It was like, and I'd just be sitting there going, yep, once again, here we are.
Well, it sounds
It was
to me
great.
like
We're
your
great.
parents did such a great job of creating such a safe environment for you
They
and your
did.
sister,
They did.
and so much so that now without them here, that responsibility for creating that safety is falling on you now. And it's
Yeah.
creating
And
that and how you do that?
yeah, and I want to like point out that like this has just been heavy on me for so long right now. It's just, moving forward and jumping into like, what am I going to do next? Like, what's my new career? Am I going to meet another woman and and get married? I've never been married or had kids, obviously, because I was doing all this and get married or whatever. And there's this part of me that just gets really sad, and I
Mm.
get it's like this weird like hurdle. It's like if you move forward and you go start living your life and get really, really, involved with all these things, your mom and dad are not going to be there to witness any of that. And it
Yeah.
makes me sad inside because I really wanted them to experience that, because the last time they actually saw me happy was I was 26, 27 years old. That was the last time they saw me happy, you know? So, and then
Yeah.
and then I went through all that, and then they passed away. So it sits hard on me, because I didn't get to experience that with my mom and dad. Um, you know, uh, I mean, I had the career, but it was sporadic and crazy in TV or whatever. But like,
Mhm.
but that was partial. But I never got to experience the marriage or buying a home or the kids or doing all that. So it sits heavy on me because I'm just like, damn, I'm not gonna have that, and I don't have that in my back pocket anymore for that girlfriend to be all like, when you meet my parents,
Right.
like,
Well, but what I hear though,
or so it's just like, because
yeah.
it always made them like be like, oh, I just like you that much more, and I'd be like, yeah, and so I'm like, I don't have that anymore, damn it, so
Well, what I do hear you saying though is that like you said it, your parents set the bar extremely high.
did,
What a wonderful gift for the
yeah,
two of you, or for the two
is it
of them
sort
rather, to intersperse within you in terms of like they provided such a great place for you, and then for you to be able to turn around and give that care back to them, that mutual respect, as a caregiver for them in the times when they really needed that, after you look back and go, they gave me so much. I think that's such an honorable and such a wonderfully beautiful space that I don't think we give a lot of credit to. And if you hear nothing else today, Roy, just know that like I see you. You did a great job. And it's
of
now time for you to move forward with your stuff and understand that you did everything that you could do. And let's just talk a little bit about what that looks like now and moving forward. You've talked about things that you wish you would have done differently. And you talked about being on the podcast and learning about different things that you wish you would have done differently in your caretaking role along the way, not just maybe for your parents, but also for you as the caregiver, right?
Mhm.
But what do you wish society really knew about I'm going to put in air quotes, career, because it's an all-encompassing full-time job of caregiving for somebody like your parents that needed that round the clock time and that round the clock attention that you couldn't afford to give them in a assisted living facility.
Right. I think for really everyone should know about it the most is the isolation. You're isolated. You're alone. And that's how I felt. That's what I witnessed. That's what I saw, as I was stuck here as the world spun around me and everybody was doing their thing and I was stuck alone right there. So that career, that world is extremely, extremely isolating if you're by yourself. If you have brothers and sisters or family members and helping you and all that, and it takes a big load off, but it's extremely isolating. And so I would say for anyone that knows anyone that's caregiving, and they're by themselves or just two people or three or whatever, just try to spend time with them. Try to spend
Yeah.
time. Make an effort to go spend time with your friend. I don't care, how crazy your life can get. There's always time for your friends. If you're making, you have to do that. As the older we get, you kind of look back and you go, man, I regret not spending time with this person or that person, but it's just that's my biggest thing that I would tell anybody is, it's extremely isolating, and please reach out to your friends that are caregiving and try to and just go watch a movie with them. Like, hey, let's go to a movie. Let's go to a
Mhm.
comedy show. Let's go to
That's a
like
good
Zanies or something like that. Let's go
one.
see music. Let's go do something that you love to do and just be. So
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
that's my biggest thing, was how isolating it was.
Yeah. Well, I have loved hearing about your relationship with your parents. I think it's something that's very unique in this day and age. I don't know a lot of people that could share the same sentiments that you have about your parents. Honestly, Roy, really, truly.
Yeah.
If your parents were sitting right beside you today, which maybe like, I mean, I kind of feel like they probably are anyway, right? If they were sitting beside you figuratively in the flesh, what do you think they would say to you today?
Um, that's a really good question. And I just want to, I'm going to circle right back to that, but I want to say like, it was kind of, like I was telling earlier about like how my dad like reached up and grabbed my hand.
Yeah.
You know, the crazy events that happened the day that my mom died, in the hospital. Um, I remember just pouring my heart out to my mom and saying all these things, because she was going to pass away that day. There was really no way around that. And it was really funny because as I was saying all these things, she it makes me laugh, but it's just like, oh man. She said, "Okay, that's great, but can I have some water?" Because she was so thirsty. She was, because she had congested heart at the end of at the end of everything too, and all that stuff. So congestive heart makes you very, very thirsty. And it made me laugh, but I was also like wanted to hear like I forgive you and this and that. But I know that she did, but I
Mm.
didn't hear it. But she just wanted water. And I was just like, okay, mom, you can drink as much as you want. So anyway, but that always just kind of makes me, if mom and dad were sitting here, I could see mom just being like, thank you for giving me water. No, but I think if my mom and dad were here, and they were sitting here, I believe that my mom or my dad would say, "Son, we're okay. You need to get going. Like we're fine." And my mom would, I mean, embrace. They would both embrace, but my mom would say something along those lines and just say that, I forgive you. Um, I love you. We love you, all that. But because my mom was very much about like, you just got to keep moving forward. You got to keep pushing
Mhm.
forward because that's what kept her alive for so long through all of her health stuff. And so she's like, you got to let it go and you got to move on. You're fine. Everything's waiting on you. You just need to get going. So I think they'd be really motivating and pushing me and knowing that I'm loved and that I'm taken care of and all that. And just to let a lot of things go, you know. So
Mm. Great
I feel like
message.
that would be like their biggest push because that's what's so hard about it is when you're the aftermath of everything and you're going through the whole healing process, you're going through all the stages. You think about all the hard times you went through, and you go through a lot in caregiving, like
Sure.
shit you don't want to talk about. I mean, I think it was like the last year that I was with my mom. We were with each other for a year solid for like 24/7.
Hmm.
A year solid. You do
Mm.
that with anybody. I don't care who you're with. It ain't gonna it's not pretty.
Right.
You're gonna be
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
days and holy shit bad days and good days. I mean,
Hmm.
I don't care what age you are, it doesn't matter. 24/7 for a year, it ain't gonna be
Hmm.
pretty. And so you start thinking about a lot of things and you focus in on that stuff and you're just like then you start just beating the shit out of yourself, for like what you went through. But that's part of that healing process. And then you have to start letting everything go. And then then the good stuff starts coming in, but it would really be like a lot of um zingers like in the heart, when like bad things would just happen, or something. So it would just like you could be in the middle of the night and things would just sing and just be like, oh God, and then those things start to ease up a bit after a while. But it was just God, man. Yeah, it's exhausting.
Well,
All that stuff is so exhausting. It's like, oh my
yeah.
God.
Yeah.
So but I still get them here and there. But I think that's just why I'm trying to do whatever it can to help people, so it won't be so hard on them. You know.
Yeah.
So I wish I had a podcast to listen to. I wish I had, more videos to go to. Groups and all that stuff can be hit or miss. I've gone to
Hmm.
a few groups, and honestly, I'm gonna be real here. It can turn into like a bitch fest and
Hmm.
moaning and groaning and real negative, and I'm like, that doesn't help. So, and they can be really good too. I don't want to say that they're all like that, but I've been to a few, and I was like, this isn't helping. So,
Yeah.
it's just I don't know. It's a lot. So I hope I can help other people with whatever they're going through. That's how
Yeah.
I that's how I feel. So
Well, and that's how we move through the world, right? I feel like that's one of our main resources that we can give is give of our experience, give of our time, give of all the things that we've gone through so that other people can know that
Yeah.
this is how we navigated it and that it's possible to get through it. And, along the way, we can beat ourselves up nonstop about what I shoulda, woulda,
Oh,
coulda.
yeah.
I mean, that
That's
stuff all day long.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, but it doesn't change the experience. And I love, we're just going to go back as we wrap up here about your mom saying, you just got to keep pushing through and you just got to keep going and you just have to find the grace and the gratitude and the moments in between the gunk to be able to say, all right, I can do this. I can do this. It sounds like amazing. Roy, thank you so much for sharing so vulnerably with all of your information, personal as well as everything that you encountered, the things you would do differently. Everybody check it out. It is The Grey Take, Grey. Congrats on the wrapping of that first season. It's exciting.
Yeah. It's on Spotify and Apple. That's where
Okay.
the platforms that it's on right now. And I appreciate you saying, being vulnerable and
Mhm.
open to everything, because I just see it as like, I want to be as raw and real as possible. So anybody that is listening and can see it and whatever, that it's real. I don't sugarcoat anything. And I do that on the Great Take as well. Like, I just don't, I just, because it's just, what I went through was traumatic. And I'm not going to sit here and act like everything's cool and all this other stuff and try to be like something that I'm not. So, I like doing stuff like this so I can be like, hey, this shit's real. And,
Mhm.
and I hope that you can see it and hear it in my voice, so you can really get a better understanding of what it's like and relate to it. So, yeah, I really had a great time doing this today. And I really enjoyed speaking to you. And thank you for inviting me on. I really do appreciate
Absolutely.
that. I love the way that we've met so randomly and how this, you know, just happened organically to be like, I want to be on your podcast. It's like, awesome, let's do this. So
Yeah.
I hope this resonates with people today. And if anybody wants to get in touch with me, please do, please do.
Absolutely. Oh, Roy, thank you so, so, so much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Have a great
Thank
weekend.
you. You too.
And yeah, and keep pressing on like your mom tells you, right? Keep
I know,
pressing
I
on.
hear all the time. I hear all the time. I'm going to press on. Yeah.
Press
Thank you.
on. All right, man. Have a great day.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Bye.